All right, we're here with Melbourne High School's principal, Dr. Miron, and he's here to tell us a little bit about his career. So, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fine. Thank you, Zach.
All right, so what's your favorite sport and what's your favorite thing about it?
Think everyone would expect me to say that my favorite sport is wrestling. And biggest thing I like about it is once you start competition, it's yourself on the mat by yourself. You're in control of your success or failure at any level of the sport.
And what age did you get into wrestling?
Around age 10 or 11 it was.
And did you ever coach a sport? And if so, which one?
Well, I did coach wrestling at Milburn High School for over 20 years. I also coach track, mostly the weight events, shot put, discus, javelin. I also coached football for nearly
Wow.
20 years. There was a 3-year interval, since you're asking, that I coached cross country. As a matter of fact, those 3 years coincided when Mr. K, who's our current track and cross country coach, I was coaching cross country his 3 years on the team.
That's a lot of sports. And which one was your favorite one to coach?
Well, I'll say wrestling for
Wrestling?
sure. Yeah.
All right. And being a wrestler, what got you into teaching and what subject did you teach?
Well, I'm not sure that wrestling got me into teaching as much as when I was in college, I was an economics major.
Wow.
And I was considering either business school at some point or education. And the one attraction for going into education was I could teach mathematics and coach sports, especially wrestling at that time. So it kind of coincided with each other. You're trying to teach, whether it's teaching through athletics or through mathematics, you're trying to teach students about themselves and life in general and the sport.
Oh, wow, that's amazing. And which college did you go to, and what was your favorite thing about it?
Well, I went to a local college in New Jersey, Princeton University, and what I appreciated about it is it offered me the education I wanted. We were very competitive wrestling at the time, so it pretty much gave me at least two things that I was very interested in.
That's cool. And sorry. And what was your favorite thing about teaching students?
Well, the interaction with students is certainly part of the reason I enjoy being principal. And, teaching students in mathematics is a subject I like, I appreciate. And, one of the goals in, in the math classes was not only to teach them how to do things and how to figure out problems, but, I'd like to think that they appreciated learning some of the stuff beyond getting ready for a test.
And what was the hardest part about teaching?
Well, not all students are motivated the same way. You're saying teaching. I'm also imagining coaching. You have different levels of goals that everybody has. For some, it's the most. For some students or athletes, it's the most important things in their lives. For others, it's just one more activity or one more class. And regardless of that, you're trying to have the student athlete improve as much as they can with their level of ability.
So, coaching and teaching all of these years, what made you the perfect candidate to be principal?
Well, number one, I'm not sure anyone ever called me the perfect candidate, but I certainly was a strong consideration from the start because I'm familiar with the high school. I'm familiar with the academic program. I was familiar with some of the extracurricular activities that we offer, especially athletics. We haven't mentioned this, but I did go to school here, so that probably gave me some experience that other people didn't have. And at some level, I probably work well with the people in the school community.
And what's it like being principal at a school that you went to?
Well, it's always interesting. In many ways, life, now is so different than life when I was in high school. At the same time, that's just part of the cultural changes that we've had throughout the country. One of the things which I enjoy the most is the interactions I have with, let's say, parents who went to school here that I may have taught, or I taught their friends, or, I coached them. So there's a little bond from, at one level, that there's some familiarity with, myself and some others.
And how have you seen students change over the years?
Again, globally, that's a cultural thing. In some ways, students, are the same. However, life has changed. One example I'll use is 30 years ago, students might pass notes in class. And with some teachers, they would never dare to try to pass a note. With other teachers, they would pass notes all day long. Well, now you bring an iPhone into the discussion. There are some classes, I would guess, that students would never try texting in their classes. Other teachers, maybe students feel they can get away with certain things. So it's gone from notes to, phones, but really students are the same.
So you feel like phones caused a lot of the changes in technology?
Well, there's been changes with technology for sure. I mean, I'm going back even the beginning of this century, which, from my perspective, doesn't seem too long ago. That's a lifetime for our students right now. They've always had phones. But we didn't have one-to-one devices till the pandemic. Now every student has, a Chromebook or their own device or their phones. It's very rare when students don't have that. I can remember, and all the teachers here can remember, when we would never allow students to use a computer in class or a phone in class or to Google things, and now we just take it for granted. So you're constantly adjusting. I think everyone has adjusted quite a bit over the years.
And what is the hardest part about being principal?
One of the things I find is that many times I'm getting involved in situations that, as an outsider, that I really don't have much control of at the time. When you're a teacher or you're a coach, you're kind of dealing with students directly, and you're dealing with emotional issues directly. As a principal, many times you're being brought into situations where you're like a third party coming in and trying to determine, well, gee, what has gone on, what's the emotions that might be taking place, whether it's between students, faculty, or whatever the case might be, and you're coming from a completely different perspective. You're not in the middle of things. You're on the outside trying to facilitate, trying to help out as much as you can.
And lastly, what is your message to students who want to become successful one day?
Well, I think we're very fortunate at Milburn High School because students are surrounded by people who are motivated. Not everybody, by far, have the motivation that maybe I want or parents may want immediately. But I'll tell you this, what we find is that even students that may not be motivated in high school, when they go off to college or other ventures, when they find something that they really want to do, they've been surrounded growing up in Milburn High School and the Milburn school system, that they know what it takes to be successful, the commitment that you really need if you're going to do something to the level that you want. So my message is learn from what you're doing, what works for you, what doesn't work for you. Learn from what you see your friends doing and how their lives have evolved, because regardless, as your future unfolds and it constantly does unfold, whether you're 17, 18, whether you're in the 30s, you've got to have an appreciation of, well, what should you be doing if you're going to achieve some of the things you want to achieve.
All right, thank you. That message is great. Thank you for being on. It was a great experience.
Well, thank you, Zach, for thinking of me when you were looking at your guest.
No problem.
Okay, that audience is good.
Yes.